The fluorescent lights of the convenience store buzzed like dying wasps above my head, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made even fresh produce look rotting. My fingers were numb from the cold. February in Chicago was unforgiving, and my coat had more holes than fabric at this point. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other behind the register, trying to keep the blood flowing, trying to stay awake. $3.75 per hour, plus whatever tips generous souls left in the grimy jar by the lottery tickets. It wasn't much. It was never enough. But it was all I had. The store smelled like stale coffee, artificial cherry air freshener, and the faint undertone of something spoiled that I could never quite locate. Mr. Patel had left me alone for the graveyard shift again, midnight to 8 in the morning, 5 nights a week. The worst hours. The hours when junkies stumbled in looking for their fix of sugar and caffeine. When homeless people pressed their faces against the glass just to feel some warmth. When my ex-boyfriend's friends would sometimes cruise by and tap on the windows just to remind me they knew where I worked. I pressed my hand against my lower abdomen, a habit I'd developed over the past 3 weeks since I'd seen those 2 pink lines. Nobody knew yet. Not Mr. Patel. Not my roommate Stephanie. Not my mother back in Ohio who could barely afford her own insulin. And certainly not Marcus. Marcus, who'd promised me everything and delivered nothing but bruises and debt. Marcus, who disappeared 6 weeks ago with my savings, my laptop, and the gold necklace my grandmother left me. Marcus, who I'd stupidly, desperately loved, because I thought someone like me didn't deserve better. The baby was his, and he would never know. My phone buzzed against the counter, the screen cracked in 3 places, held together with clear tape. I'd been trying to reach Marcus for weeks now, not because I wanted him back, but because I needed answers. He'd left me with more than just a broken heart. He'd left me with collection agencies calling about loans I never took out, credit cards I never opened. He'd ruined me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The message preview showed a number I didn't recognize. My heart jumped. Maybe Marcus had gotten a new phone. Maybe he'd finally respond. I unlocked the screen with shaking fingers. Unknown. Number. The shipment arrives Thursday. Pier 47. Midnight. Come alone. Wrong number. Obviously. But something made me pause. Made my thumb hover over the keyboard. The way my life had been going, what did I have to lose? Maybe a little chaos would distract me from my own disaster. Me. You have the wrong number. But whoever you're texting probably needs to know you meant Pier 47, not 46. I hit send before I could overthink it, then immediately regretted it. What if this was something dangerous? What if... 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing. Unknown number. Who is this? Me. Nobody. Just someone who got your text by mistake. Good luck with your... shipment. I should have stopped there. Should have blocked the number and gone back to staring at the empty parking lot, counting down the hours until dawn. But my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. How do you know it should be Pier 47? My stomach twisted. This felt wrong suddenly, like I'd stepped into something I couldn't step out of. But I'd already opened my mouth, might as well finish. Me. Because Pier 46 burned down last month. It's all over the news. Pier 47 is the only one still operating in that district. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared 3 times. Minutes passed. 5, then 10. I was about to put my phone down when it buzzed again. Unknown number. Smart girl. What's your name? I shouldn't answer. Every instinct screamed at me to block this number, to pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, I found myself typing. Me. Does it matter? Unknown number. Everything matters. Something about those 2 words made my pulse quicken. There was weight to them. Authority. This wasn't some random person. This was someone who meant what they said. Me. Emma. My name is Emma. Unknown number. Emma. You just saved me a significant problem. I don't forget when someone helps me. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that echoed in the empty store. Help? I'd sent 1 text. That wasn't help. That was boredom and poor judgment. Me. I didn't help you. I just corrected a typo. Have a good night. I was about to put my phone in my pocket when the bell above the door chimed. A gust of winter wind cut through the store, and I looked up, expecting to see another tired soul looking for coffee or cigarettes. Instead, I saw him. He stood in the doorway like he owned not just the store, but the entire city block, tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled out his black wool coat in a way that suggested both power and violence carefully contained. Dark hair, styled but not fussy, with just enough gray at the temples to make him look distinguished rather than old. Maybe late 30s. His face was all sharp angles and hard edges, the kind of face that never smiled unless it was calculating something, but it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark, almost black, and fixed entirely on me with an intensity that made me want to simultaneously run and freeze in place. He didn't look at me the way men usually did, with quick, dismissive glances that catalogued and discarded me in seconds. He looked at me like he was solving an equation, like I was something that required his complete attention. Behind him, 2 men entered. Not casual shoppers. They flanked him with the practiced ease of bodyguards, their hands visible but ready, their eyes scanning the store with professional efficiency. One was built like a linebacker, his neck as thick as my thigh. The other was leaner but no less dangerous, with a scar running from his eyebrow to his cheekbone. The man in the center, the one who commanded the room without saying a word, walked toward my register with measured steps. Each footfall echoed on the dirty linoleum. I could smell him as he approached, expensive cologne, something dark and woody with notes of leather and smoke. It was completely at odds with the environment. Like a panther had wandered into a dog kennel. He stopped in front of my register. Up close, I could see more details. The way his coat probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. The subtle gleam of a watch on his wrist that I recognized from a magazine once. Something Swiss and exclusive. The small, almost invisible earpiece in his left ear. Emma. My name in his voice was nothing like the way anyone had ever said it before. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a claiming. My phone was still on the counter between us, screen facing up, the text conversation clearly visible. Ice flooded my veins. "How do you—" I started, but he raised one hand. Just a slight movement, barely lifting his fingers, but it silenced me completely. "You corrected my associate's message." He didn't blink. "You knew about Pier 46. It was on the news," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Everyone knows. I know who you are." He placed his own phone on the counter, and I saw my cracked screen phone number displayed on his screen. "I know where you work. I know you live in that apartment on Kedzie Avenue with the broken heater and the landlord who hasn't fixed anything in 8 months. I know your ex-boyfriend was Marcus Chen. I know Marcus worked for some very stupid people who thought they could steal from me." The world tilted. Marcus. This was about Marcus. "I don't know anything about that," I said quickly, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. "We broke up. He left. I haven't seen him in 6 weeks. His eyes never left mine. "Yes, because 6 weeks ago, Marcus Chen and 3 of his associates attempted to intercept one of my shipments. They failed. 2 of them are dead. 1 is in the hospital with injuries that will take months to heal from. Marcus." He paused, and something flickered across his face. "Marcus is missing." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Marcus was involved with this man? Marcus, who could barely hold down a job at his uncle's restaurant, who spent his days playing video games and his nights drinking cheap beer. "I need to find him," the man continued, his voice soft but absolutely terrifying in its calmness. "And you're going to help me. I don't know where he is." The words burst out of me, desperate and true. "He left me with nothing. He stole from me. I stopped. Too much information. But the man's eyes had sharpened, focused on something. He leaned forward slightly, and I instinctively stepped back, my spine hitting the cigarette display behind me. His gaze dropped, just for a second, to where my hand had unconsciously moved to my stomach again. When his eyes met mine again, something had changed. A new calculation was happening behind that dark stare. "When were you going to tell him?" he asked quietly. My heart stopped. Completely stopped. "Tell him what?" But my voice was too weak, too transparent. "About the baby." The world went silent. The buzzing lights, the distant traffic, the hum of the refrigerators, everything disappeared except this man. and the truth he'd somehow extracted from a gesture I didn't even know I was making. Don't lie to me, Emma. He said it almost gently, but there was steel underneath. I've built my life on reading people. You're 3, maybe 4 weeks along. You're tired. You're scared. And you have no intention of telling Marcus Chen that he's going to be a father. Tears burned my eyes. I refused to let them fall. It's none of your business, I whispered. Marcus made it my business when he stole from me. He straightened, reaching into his coat. I flinched, but he only pulled out a business card. Black, minimalist, with just a phone number embossed in silver. He placed it on the counter next to my phone. But you're right. The baby isn't his concern anymore. He turned to leave, and I should have been relieved. Should have thanked whatever God was listening that he was walking away. Instead, I heard myself say, "What do you mean?" He stopped, didn't turn around. I mean that Marcus Chen doesn't deserve to know he's going to be a father. Not after what he did to you. Not after what he tried to do to me. Now he looked back, and the expression on his face made something in my chest constrict. But you, Emma, you deserve better than working graveyard shifts in a store that doesn't even have working security cameras, raising a child alone because some worthless coward destroyed your life. You don't know anything about me, I said, but even I could hear how hollow it sounded. I know enough. He nodded to one of his men, who immediately moved toward the door. I know you're in debt that isn't yours. I know you're pregnant and alone. I know you're exactly the kind of person Marcus would leave behind without a second thought. He paused at the door, his hand on the frame. And I know that when I find him, and I will find him, you're going to have 2 choices. What choices? The cold wind rushed in again as he pushed the door open. Option 1. You continue this life, working yourself to death, drowning in Marcus's mistakes, raising his child in poverty while he faces justice for his crimes. His eyes locked with mine one final time. Option 2. You come work for me. Before I could respond, before I could process what he'd just said, he was gone. The black SUV that I hadn't noticed before roared to life in the parking lot, and within seconds they had disappeared into the Chicago night. I stood there, shaking, staring at the business card on my counter. No name, just a number. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Think about it, Emma, but don't think too long. I'll be in touch. And then, 5 minutes later, another message that made my blood run cold. Unknown number. By the way, I'm handling your debt, all of it. Consider it a gift. You're welcome. I checked my banking app with trembling fingers, not believing, not daring to hope. 0 balance on all the collection accounts. The credit cards Marcus had opened in my name, paid in full, the payday loans, gone. $37,000 of debt erased in minutes. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor behind the counter. My phone clutched in my hand, that black business card staring up at me from where it had fallen. What had I just gotten myself into? I didn't sleep that day. After my shift ended at 8 in the morning, I walked the 6 blocks to my apartment in a daze, the business card burning in my pocket like a living thing. The sun was already up, pale and cold, casting long shadows across the dirty snow piled along the sidewalks. Chicago in February was brutal, but I barely felt the wind cutting through my thin coat. I was numb in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. The apartment building looked worse in daylight. Peeling paint, broken buzzers, trash overflowing from the dumpster in the alley. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my legs heavy with exhaustion, and let myself into the studio I shared with Stephanie. She wasn't home, probably at her boyfriend's place again, which meant I had the space to myself. I collapsed onto my mattress on the floor. We'd sold the bed frame months ago to make rent, and stared at the water-stained ceiling, trying to make sense of the past 6 hours. A Mafia boss, because that's what he had to be, right? The bodyguards, the way he moved, the casual mention of people being dead or in the hospital, the ability to erase my debt with a phone call. That wasn't normal. That wasn't legal. Marcus had stolen from the Mafia, and I'd texted them by mistake. My hand moved to my stomach again, that unconscious gesture that had given me away. 4 weeks pregnant. I'd taken 3 different tests, hoping each time that the previous one was wrong, but they all said the same thing. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Positive. I should feel something, shouldn't I? Joy or fear or excitement. Instead, I just felt tired. So deeply. Impossibly tired. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, but some masochistic part of me needed to know. Unknown number. Sleep, Emma. You'll need your strength for what comes next. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall but didn't break. Couldn't break, because it was already broken, held together with tape and desperation. How did he know I wasn't sleeping? Was someone watching me? I got up and checked the window, my heart hammering. The street below looked normal. A few cars, some people walking to work, a dog being walked by an elderly woman. Nothing suspicious. Nothing. Wait. There, across the street. A black sedan, windows tinted, engine running. It had been there when I came home, hadn't it? I'd been too distracted to notice. As I watched, the passenger window rolled down just an inch. I couldn't see who was inside, but I knew. I felt it in my bones. They were watching me. I stumbled back from the window, my breathing coming in short gasps. This was insane. This was wrong. I needed to call the police, needed to... And tell them what? That a mysterious man paid off my debt and now had someone watching my apartment? They'd laugh at me. Or worse, they'd investigate and find out about Marcus, and somehow I'd end up being implicated in whatever he'd done. I was trapped. The realization settled over me like a physical weight. There was no good option here. If I ran, they'd find me. He'd proven he knew everything about me. If I stayed, I was under surveillance. If I ignored him, what then? Would the debt come back? Would something worse happen? Option 2. You come work for me. I grabbed my phone from where it had landed near the bathroom door. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was crazy. This was the worst possible decision. But what other choice did I have? Me. What kind of work? The response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. Unknown number. Nothing that will harm you or the baby. You have my word. Me. The word of a criminal? Unknown. Number. The word of a man who keeps his promises. More than Marcus ever gave you. I hated that he was right. I hated everything about this situation. Me. I need time to think. Unknown. Number. You have until tonight. 8 p.m. A car will come for you. Be ready. Me. And if I'm not, the typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. When his response finally came, it was just 4 words that made my stomach drop. Unknown number. Then you'll miss dinner. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because the next thing I knew, Stephanie was shaking my shoulder, her voice high and panicked. Emma! Emma, wake up! There are men outside asking for you. I jolted awake, disoriented. The light coming through the window was different. Late afternoon, maybe 5 or 6. I'd slept through most of the day. What men? I croaked, my throat dry. I don't know. They're just standing by the door in fancy suits, and when I asked what they wanted, they said they were here for Emma Mitchell. Are you in trouble? Is this about Marcus? Oh God, Emma, what did you do? I sat up too quickly, and the room spun. Morning sickness, though apparently it didn't care what time of day it actually was. I swallowed hard, fighting the nausea. I'm not in trouble. I lied. It's complicated. Stephanie stared at me, her eyes wide. She was 23, 2 years younger than me, with perfect makeup and perfectly curled hair, even though she'd just woken up. Her family had money. She only lived here because she thought it was authentic to struggle for a while before she went back to her comfortable life. We were friends, but not really. Not in the way that mattered. They said a car is coming at 8, she continued. They wanted to make sure you'd be ready. Emma, what the hell is going on? I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 7:30. I'd slept longer than I thought. I need to get ready, I said, standing up. The room tilted again, but I forced myself to stay upright. It's fine. Everything's fine. You're lying. Stephanie crossed her arms. You've been weird for weeks. You're exhausted all the time. You're not eating. And now there are men in suits waiting for you like you're some kind of, I'm pregnant. The words came out before I could stop them. Stephanie's mouth fell open. You're... what? Pregnant. 4 weeks. It's Marcus's and he doesn't know, and he's never going to know because he's... I couldn't finish that sentence. Dead, maybe. In hiding, definitely. He's gone. Stephanie sank onto her mattress, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Emma... oh my God. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I moved to the tiny bathroom, turning on the shower. But right now, I need to get ready. For what? Who are those people? I met her eyes in the mirror, someone who might be able to help me. Or destroy me. I honestly can't tell which. At exactly 8 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Not the buzzer. Someone had bypassed the building's pathetic security and come straight up. I opened it to find the same 2 men from the convenience store, the linebacker and the one with the scar. Up close, they were even more intimidating. The scarred one spoke first, his voice surprisingly refined. Miss Mitchell, the car is waiting. I'd done the best I could with my appearance, showered, put on the only dress I owned that didn't have visible stains, found a coat that had fewer holes, but standing next to these men in their tailored suits and polished shoes, I felt like a child playing dress-up. Stephanie stood behind me, her phone in her hand. Should I call someone? She whispered. No, I said firmly. Then, to the men, I'm ready. The elevator was broken as usual, so we walked down the 3 flights in silence. I could feel their presence behind me. Not threatening, but absolutely vigilant. When we emerged onto the street, I saw the car. Not an SUV this time. A Mercedes, sleek and black, with windows so darkly tinted they looked like mirrors. The scarred man opened the back door, and I hesitated for just a moment before climbing in. The interior smelled like leather and that same cologne from last night. But the back seat was empty. Where is he? I asked as the door closed behind me. The restaurant, the scarred man said from the front passenger seat. The linebacker was driving. We'll arrive in 20 minutes, the restaurant. He'd said dinner. I'd thought he was joking. We drove through Chicago in silence, moving from my neighborhood, with its boarded-up shops and chain-link fences, into areas I'd only seen in magazines. The buildings got taller, cleaner. The people on the sidewalks wore coats that cost more than my monthly income. We crossed the river, heading into the Loop, and then beyond it to the Gold Coast. The car finally stopped in front of a building with no visible sign, just a discreet awning and a doorman who opened the car door before I could reach for the handle. Miss Mitchell, he said with a slight bow. He's expecting you. I stepped onto the sidewalk, my cheap shoes clicking on pristine concrete. The scarred man appeared at my elbow, not touching but guiding me toward the entrance. The doorman held the door, and we entered a space that made my breath catch. It wasn't a restaurant, it was art. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights of Chicago spreading out like a galaxy. The interior was all dark wood and soft lighting, with tables spaced so far apart that each felt like a private world. Classical music played softly, a piano, I thought, live piano. And there, at a table by the window, sat the man from last night. He stood as I approached, and I saw him clearly for the first time in proper lighting. He was younger than I'd thought initially, mid-30s, maybe 37 at most. The gray in his hair was premature, stress-induced. His suit was midnight blue, so dark it was almost black, with a black shirt underneath and no tie. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread about powerful men who ruled from the shadows. Emma? He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. I sat because my legs were shaking too badly to stand. The chair was more comfortable than any piece of furniture in my apartment. He resumed his seat, his movements economical and precise. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The words came out sharper than I intended. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something. There's always a choice. You could have run. Some people would have. Would you have found me? Yes. At least he was honest. A waiter appeared. Young, nervous, avoiding eye contact. He placed a glass of water in front of me and asked if I wanted anything else to drink. She'll have sparkling water, the man said before I could answer, with lemon. And bring the tasting menu. but no shellfish or soft cheeses." The waiter nodded and disappeared. I stared at him. "How did you—" "Pregnant women shouldn't eat shellfish or soft cheeses. Listeria risk." He took a sip of what looked like whiskey. "I do my research." "You researched pregnancy dietary restrictions?" "I research everything that matters." His eyes held mine. "And you matter, Emma." I laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "I'm nobody. I'm a convenience store clerk who texted you by mistake. Why do I matter?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that same intensity from last night. "Do you know what I do, Emma? Something illegal." "Many things are illegal. Be more specific." "You're— what? Mafia?" "Organized crime." I prefer to think of myself as a businessman who operates outside traditional regulatory frameworks. That almost smile again. "But yes, if you want to use crude terms. I control shipping routes, manage distribution networks, and ensure that certain goods reach certain people without government interference. Drugs," I said flatly. "Among other things. Weapons, information, currency. Whatever my clients need." He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "It's a complicated business, Emma. It requires trust, loyalty, and the ability to read people accurately. And you think you can read me? I know I can." He set down his glass. "You're intelligent. You proved that with your text about the pier. You're observant. You notice details that my own associate missed. You're resilient. You've been carrying Marcus's debt for months without breaking, working a job that would destroy most people just to survive. And you're loyal to a fault. You're pregnant with the child of a man who betrayed you in every possible way, and you're still not talking to the police." Each observation felt like being flayed open. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're scared. I know you're exhausted. I know you lie awake at night wondering how you're going to raise a child alone, how you're going to afford prenatal care, how you're going to keep a roof over your head." He leaned forward. "And I know that despite everything Marcus did to you, some small part of you still hoped he'd come back. Until last night, when you realized exactly what he'd gotten himself into." Tears burned my eyes. I refused to let them fall. "Why did you pay my debt?" I whispered. "Because you helped me without knowing who I was or what you'd gain from it. Because in my world, that kind of honesty is rare." He paused. "And because no woman should be punished for the sins of a coward." The waiter returned with my sparkling water and a small plate of something that looked too beautiful to eat. I didn't touch it. "You said you wanted me to work for you," I said. "Doing what?" "I have many businesses, Emma. Legal ones. Restaurants, real estate, import companies. They all need bookkeepers, managers, people who can be trusted with sensitive information." His eyes never left mine. "You would work in one of my legitimate establishments. Real salary, real benefits, health insurance that would cover your pregnancy. In exchange, you'd be available when I need information verified or documents reviewed. Nothing illegal on your part, just discretion. I'd be laundering money. You'd be managing books. What I do with those books is my concern." "And if I say no?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Not the one from last night, a different one. He pressed a few buttons and turned the screen toward me. I saw Marcus. He was alive, but barely. Tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, his face bruised and swollen. Blood dried on his shirt. He looked terrified. "He's been talking," the man said quietly, "telling me everything. About how he met you, how he used you, how he planned to use your identity for more fraud after he left. He's not a good person, Emma. I'm sure you've realized that by now." I couldn't look away from the screen. "Are you going to kill him?" "That depends on you." My eyes snapped to his face. "What?" "If you agree to work for me, Marcus lives. He'll face consequences. He stole from me, and that can't go unpunished. But he'll live. He'll spend the next decade paying back what he took through labor, but he'll survive." He pocketed the phone. "If you refuse, then Marcus becomes an example, a message to anyone else who thinks they can steal from me and hide behind innocent women. That's not a choice," I said, my voice shaking. "That's blackmail. That's business." He sipped his whiskey. "Everything is negotiation, Emma. I'm offering you a life where you don't have to worry about money, where your child will have opportunities you never did. All I ask in return is loyalty and discretion. Marcus's fate is simply additional motivation for you to choose wisely. I felt sick. Not morning sickness this time. Just pure, overwhelming nausea at the trap I'd walked into. I don't have a choice, do I? You always have a choice. He gestured to the food that had been appearing steadily throughout our conversation. But I think we both know which choice makes sense. Eat, Emma. You need to take care of yourself now. You're not alone anymore. That last sentence made something crack inside my chest, because he was right. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't alone. I just wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse. I ate because my body demanded it, because the baby needed it, not because I had any appetite. Each bite of the expertly prepared food tasted like ash in my mouth, but I forced it down while he watched me with those dark, calculating eyes. "What's your name?" I asked finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between us. He tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether to answer. Dominic Volkov. Russian. That explained the slight accent I'd noticed underneath his perfect English, the way certain consonants came out just a fraction harder than they should. "How old are you, Dominic?" I don't know why I asked. Maybe I needed to humanize him, to see him as something other than the monster holding my life in his hands. 36. He refilled my water glass himself, an oddly intimate gesture. Old enough to know better than to let a convenience store clerk get under my skin. And yet, here we are. I didn't ask to get under your skin. No, you didn't. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or something darker. You simply existed at the wrong moment, sent the right text, and demonstrated qualities I've spent years trying to find in my organization. Call it fate if you're romantic. I call it opportunity. Opportunity. I set down my fork. Is that what you call destroying my life? I didn't destroy your life, Emma. Marcus did that long before I entered the picture. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table in a posture that would have seemed casual if not for the intensity in his eyes. I'm offering you a way to rebuild it, a foundation that won't crumble the moment someone disappointing walks into your world. By making me complicit in crime. By giving you security. His voice dropped lower. Do you know what happens to single mothers in this city? Women working minimum wage jobs, trying to raise children alone? I've seen the statistics, Emma. I've seen how the system grinds them down until there's nothing left but exhaustion and regret. Is that what you want for your child? I hated that his words found their target. That he was articulating fears I'd been trying not to think about since I saw those 2 pink lines. And what do you get out of this? I asked. Why do you care? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I had a sister once, younger than me. She got involved with someone like Marcus. Charming, useless, destructive. He got her pregnant and disappeared. She tried to raise the baby alone, working herself to death in factory jobs that barely paid enough for food. He paused, and for the first time, I saw something crack in his carefully controlled expression. She died when the baby was 6 months old. Exhaustion, malnutrition, an infection she couldn't afford to treat properly. The baby went to the state, and I never saw my nephew again. The silence that followed was heavy with grief I hadn't expected him capable of feeling. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry. Be smart. He straightened, the vulnerability disappearing behind his usual mask. I can't save my sister, but I can make sure another woman doesn't end up like her. Consider it my penance, if that makes you feel better about accepting help from someone like me. The waiter appeared again, clearing plates with practiced efficiency. Neither of us spoke until he'd gone. When would I start? I asked quietly. Something in Dominic's posture relaxed infinitesimally. Tomorrow. One of my restaurants needs a day manager. It's legitimate work. Payroll, inventory, scheduling. You'd make $4,000 a month to start, with full benefits beginning immediately. He pulled out yet another phone and slid it across the table. This is yours. Encrypted. Untraceable. You'll use it for all communication with me and my associates. I stared at the sleek device. I can't accept this. You already have. The moment you sat down at this table, you made your choice. His eyes held mine. I don't deal in half measures, Emma. You're either in or you're out, and you've already decided which it is. He was right, and we both knew it. I picked up the phone. The car that took me home was different from the one that had picked me up, another Mercedes, but silver this time. The scarred man drove while I sat in the back, the new phone heavy in my hand, Dominic's words echoing in my head. You're not alone anymore, but what did that mean, really? That I'd traded one form of dependence for another? That instead of drowning in Marcus's debt, I was now tied to a man who casually discussed murder over dinner? The phone buzzed in my hand, making me jump. Dominic. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The address is already programmed into your phone. Carlo will pick you up at 8:30. Me. Carlo? Dominic. The man with the scar. He'll be your primary security. Me. I don't need security. Dominic. You're carrying Marcus Chen's child and working for me. Yes, Emma, you need security. The car pulled up in front of my building. Carlo turned to look at me through the rearview mirror, and I saw his scar more clearly in the interior light. A jagged line that suggested violence, survival. 8:30, Miss Mitchell, he said. His voice was gentler than I expected. Dress professionally but comfortably. It's a restaurant, not a boardroom. I nodded and climbed out, feeling their eyes on me until I disappeared into the building. Stephanie was waiting in the apartment, practically vibrating with curiosity. What happened? Where did you go? Emma, you have to tell me everything. I sank onto my mattress, suddenly more exhausted than I'd been after a full graveyard shift. I got a job. A job? That's what this was about? Men in suits and fancy cars for a job? It's complicated. I looked at her. This girl who'd never had to worry about where her next meal was coming from, who treated poverty like a temporary adventure. I'm going to be managing a restaurant. It pays well, really well. Her eyes widened. Emma, that's amazing. But who was that guy? The one who hired you? Someone powerful. I pulled my coat tighter around myself, though the apartment wasn't cold. Someone dangerous, but someone who's giving me a chance I won't get anywhere else. Stephanie sat down beside me, her expression serious for once. Is this about Marcus? About what he did? Partially. I couldn't tell her everything, couldn't explain about the Mafia connection, the surveillance, the choice that wasn't really a choice. Marcus got involved with some bad people, and now I'm cleaning up the mess. Are you safe? I almost laughed. Safe? I'd never be truly safe again, but I'd be alive. Fed. Protected in ways that mattered. I think so. I lied. The man who hired me, he has resources. He's making sure nothing bad happens to me. Is he cute? The question was so unexpected, so typically Stephanie, that I did laugh then. That's what you're worried about? I saw him through the window when the car picked you up. Tall, dark, handsome in that scary, sexy way. And clearly interested in you, or he wouldn't go through all this trouble. He's not interested in me, but even as I said it, I remembered the way Dominic looked at me across the dinner table, the intensity in his eyes when he talked about his sister, the careful way he'd made sure every dish was safe for pregnancy. He's just keeping an eye on his investment. If you say so. Stephanie smiled knowingly. But Emma, that phone you're holding, that's not a phone someone gives to an employee. That's a phone someone gives to someone they want to stay connected to. And I looked down at the encrypted device in my hand, its screen dark and mysterious. She wasn't wrong. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced with everything that had happened, everything that was about to change. At 3 a.m, the new phone buzzed. Dominic, are you awake? I should have ignored it, should have set boundaries. Instead, I found myself typing back. Me. Can't sleep. Dominic. The baby? Me. Everything. This is insane. Yesterday I was nobody, and now I'm... What am I? The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. Dominic, you're someone under my protection. That's all you need to understand for now. Me. What about Marcus? You showed me that picture. Is he really still alive? Dominic. Yes. I keep my promises, Emma. He'll live. He'll suffer, but he'll live. Me. I don't want him to suffer. I just want him gone from my life. Dominic. He'll be gone. After tomorrow, you'll never have to think about Marcus Chen again unless you choose to. Me. Why are you really doing this? Don't give me the story about your sister. There's something else. A long pause. I watched the screen, wondering if he'd answer at all. Dominic. Get some sleep, Emma. Carlo will be there at 8:30. Don't be late. He dodged the question, which meant I was right. There was more to this than altruism or penance. But what? I fell asleep finally, just as the sky was beginning to lighten. My hand resting on my stomach where Dominic's nephew's cousin, or whatever complicated relationship this baby had to his dead sister's child, was growing cell by microscopic cell. When my alarm went off at 7:30, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But I dragged myself up, showered in our tiny bathroom with its cracked tiles and weak water pressure, and stood in front of my pathetic closet trying to figure out what professionally but comfortably meant when you owned 3 outfits total. I settled on black pants that were only slightly worn at the knees, and a gray sweater that Stephanie had given me. It would have to do. At exactly 8:30, there was a knock at the door. Carlo stood there with 2 coffee cups and a small bag. Decaf latte and a muffin, he said, handing them to me. Mr. Volkov thought you might not have time for breakfast. The thoughtfulness of it surprised me. Thank you. Ready, Miss Mitchell? I grabbed the coat with the fewest holes and followed him down to the waiting car. The restaurant was in River North, a beautiful brick building with large windows and a sign that read, Sapphire, in elegant script. Carlo opened my door, and we walked inside together. It was beautiful. All polished wood and soft lighting, with a bar that gleamed like liquid gold. The staff was already there, servers setting tables, a bartender organizing bottles, a woman who looked like she might be the hostess reviewing a reservation book, and standing by the bar, looking completely at ease in charcoal slacks and a black sweater, was Dominic. He turned as we entered, and I saw something flash across his face. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction. Emma, he said, crossing to me in a few long strides. Welcome to Sapphire. This is yours now. Mine? I repeated, certain I'd misheard him. You're the manager. Dominic gestured around the restaurant with proprietorial ease. Everything operational falls under your supervision. Staff scheduling, inventory management, vendor relations, customer service. The previous manager retired unexpectedly. The way he said retired made me think the poor person probably hadn't had much choice in the matter. I don't know anything about managing a restaurant, I protested, even as my eyes took in the beautiful space, the kind of place I'd never have been able to afford to eat at in my entire life. You'll learn. He placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the bar. The touch was light, almost impersonal, but I felt it like a brand through my sweater. Carlo will stay close for the first few weeks. Any problems, any questions, you contact me directly. The staff knows you have my full authority. The woman with the reservation book approached, her smile professional but warm. She was older, maybe 50, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and kind eyes behind designer glasses. You must be Emma, she said, extending her hand. I'm Patricia. I've been the hostess here for 6 years. Mr. Volkov told us you'd be taking over management. I shook her hand, acutely aware of how rough my own palm must feel compared to her manicured softness. Nice to meet you. I have to be honest. I have no experience with this. You'll do fine, Patricia said, and something in her tone made me believe her. The team here is solid. We just need someone to keep things organized and make sure the vendors don't try to rip us off. The last manager was letting them overcharge for produce. Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, which is why she's no longer here. Over the next hour, Patricia walked me through the basics, while Dominic observed from the bar, nursing an espresso that Carlo had made him. I learned about the reservation system, the staff rotation, the inventory process. My head spun with information, but underneath the overwhelming flood of details, I felt something unexpected, excitement. This was real. This was mine. Or as mine as anything could be when it was given to me by a man who controlled it all. The lunch shift starts at 11, Patricia explained, showing me the office, a small but well-organized space with a computer, filing cabinets, and a desk that had probably cost more than my annual salary at the convenience store. Most days you'll need to be here from 9 until close at midnight, but Mr. Volkov mentioned you have special circumstances. Her eyes flickered briefly to my stomach before returning to my face. So, we're arranging for an assistant manager to handle some of the evening duties. He told you? I asked quietly. Mr. Volkov is very thorough about ensuring his people are taken care of. Patricia's smile was genuine. Congratulations, by the way. Pregnancy is a blessing. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Dominic appeared in the doorway, filling the small space with his presence. Patricia, give us a moment. She nodded and slipped out, closing the door behind her. Suddenly the office felt impossibly small, the air charged with something I couldn't name. Sit, Dominic said, gesturing to the desk chair. I sat. He remained standing, leaning against the filing cabinet with his arms crossed, studying me in that unnerving way of his. You'll receive your first paycheck Friday, he said. $4,000. Carlo will help you open a new bank account today, one Marcus never had access to. Your apartment situation, he paused. How long is your lease? Month to month. Why? Because you're moving. I stood up so fast the chair rolled backward. Excuse me? Your current apartment is inadequate. No heat, questionable security, in a neighborhood where gunshots are a nightly occurrence. His tone was matter of fact, not cruel, which somehow made it worse. I own a building in Lincoln Park. 2-bedroom units, full security, maintenance included. You'll move there by the end of the week. You can't just decide where I live. I can, and I have. He straightened, taking a step closer. Emma, you work for me now. That means you're under my protection, and I don't protect my people by leaving them in dangerous situations. This isn't negotiable. Everything with you is not negotiable, I shot back, anger overriding my fear. You've taken over my entire life in less than 24 hours. Yes. He moved closer still, until I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact, because your life was falling apart, and someone needed to catch you before you hit the ground. I'm not the villain here, Emma. I'm the only thing standing between you and complete destruction. I was managing fine before you showed up. You were drowning. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Working a job that was killing you slowly, carrying debt that would have buried you, pregnant and alone with no prospects and no hope. That's not managing. That's surviving by your fingernails, and we both know those fingernails were about to give out. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. I turned away, not wanting him to see the tears burning my eyes. I don't want to be your charity case, I whispered. You're not. His hand touched my shoulder, gentle, unexpected. You're an investment, one I intend to protect. A pause. And perhaps something more than that, though neither of us is ready to examine what that means yet. I turned back to face him, and something in his expression made my breath catch. It wasn't the cold calculation I'd seen before. It was hunger, raw and barely controlled. What do you want from me? I asked. Right now, I want you to accept the apartment, learn this job, and take care of yourself and that baby. His thumb traced a small circle on my shoulder before he dropped his hand. What I'll want in the future, we'll negotiate when the time comes. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. All business, all sharp edges again. I have to go. Carlo stays with you. If you need anything, call me directly. He moved toward the door, then paused. Emma, thank you. For what? For trusting me enough to be here. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in an office that was supposedly mine, in a restaurant I was supposedly managing, in a life I supposedly controlled. But we both knew the truth. Dominic Volkov owned it all, including me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Patricia proved invaluable, walking me through everything from how to process deliveries to how to handle difficult customers. The staff was friendly but clearly curious about me, the mysterious new manager who'd appeared overnight with Mr. Volkov's explicit endorsement. Carlo remained a silent shadow, always within sight, but never intrusive. During my break, He drove me to a bank. Not my usual branch, but a private banking office that felt more like a luxury hotel than a financial institution. Within an hour, I had a new account with a balance that made my head spin. Dominic had deposited not just my first paycheck, but 3 months' salary in advance. "Security?" Carlo explained when he saw my expression. "Mr. Volkov wants you to have a cushion." "This is more than a cushion. I don't even know what this is. This is what happens when you matter to him." Carlo's scarred face was unreadable. "And Miss Mitchell? You matter to him more than you realize." I wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his tone suggested the conversation was over. By the time evening came, I was exhausted but strangely satisfied. I'd made it through an entire shift without major disasters. The staff seemed to respect me, or at least respect Dominic's faith in me. Patricia had promised to help me with anything I needed. It almost felt normal. Almost. Carlo drove me home at 10 p.m., earlier than Dominic had promised I'd have to work. "Mr. Volkov's orders," he said when I questioned it. "You need rest." The apartment felt smaller than ever after spending the day in Sapphire's elegant spaces. Stephanie wasn't home, probably at her boyfriend's again. I collapsed onto my mattress, too tired to even shower, and pulled out the encrypted phone. "Me. Thank you. For today, for everything." The response came within seconds. "Dominic. How do you feel?" Me. Overwhelmed. Grateful. Terrified. All of it. Dominic. "That's normal. It will get easier." Me. "Will it? Or will I just get used to being controlled?" Dominic. "You're not being controlled, Emma. You're being protected. There's a difference." Me. "Is there?" A long pause. Then, "Dominic. Come to dinner tomorrow night. Just us. Let me show you the difference." My heart hammered against my ribs. This felt like crossing a line, moving from employee to something else entirely. Me. "Is that appropriate?" Dominic. "Nothing about our arrangement is appropriate. But I think we stopped pretending this was a normal employer-employee relationship the moment I paid your debt." He was right. And that terrified me more than anything else. Me. "What time?" Dominic. 8 p.m. Carlo will bring you. Wear something comfortable. This isn't business, Emma. This is personal. I stared at those last words until my vision blurred. Personal. What did personal mean to a man like Dominic Volkov? What did it mean to me? I fell asleep without answering, my phone clutched in my hand, and dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous promises. The next morning, I woke to find Stephanie packing a suitcase. "What's going on?" I asked groggily. Derek proposed. She held up her hand, showing off a diamond that probably cost more than my car, if I'd had a car. "We're moving to New York. His dad got him a position at some finance firm, and we're leaving next week." I sat up, fully awake now. "Next week?" "Stephanie, the lease is month to month, remember? I'll pay my half for this month, but after that..." She shrugged apologetically. "I'm sorry, Emma. I know this is sudden, but it's such an amazing opportunity." For her. For me, it meant finding a new roommate, or finding a way to afford this place alone, which was impossible on any normal salary. But I didn't have a normal salary anymore, did I? And Dominic had already told me I was moving. "Congratulations," I said, meaning it despite everything. "I'm happy for you. What about you? Will you be okay? That restaurant job? Can you afford a place on your own? I'll figure it out." I grabbed my phone, seeing a new message from Dominic. Dominic. "Heard about your roommate. The apartment in Lincoln Park is ready. Carlo will help you move this weekend. Consider it done." I stared at the message. He knew about Stephanie before I'd even fully processed it myself. Of course he did. He probably had people watching this building, reporting everything back to him. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. I was being taken care of, protected. Controlled, yes, but in ways that were keeping me afloat instead of dragging me under. Was that enough? Could it ever be enough? I looked around the shabby apartment at the water-stained ceiling and the broken radiator, and the windows that didn't quite close all the way. Then I thought about Sapphire, about Patricia's kindness, about the bank account with 3 months' salary sitting in it, about Dominic's eyes across the dinner table, the way he'd touched my shoulder yesterday, the promise of personal in tonight's invitation. I typed my response. Me. "Okay, I'll move. I'll have dinner with you tonight. I'll try to trust this, Dominic. That's all I ask. For now. For now. Those 2 words carried the weight of everything unspoken between us. All the questions we weren't ready to ask. All the answers we weren't ready to hear. But tonight, over dinner, maybe we'd start finding some of those answers, whether I was ready for them or not. Carlo picked me up at 7:30, giving me time to prepare. I'd showered until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the anxiety that clung to my skin like a second layer. The only dress I owned that felt remotely appropriate was a dark green wrap dress that Stephanie had given me months ago, saying the color was totally wrong for her skin tone. On me, it brought out the amber flecks in my brown eyes and made my pale skin look less sickly. I'd never cared much about my appearance before. Survival didn't leave room for vanity. But tonight, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I found myself wanting to look beautiful. Not for Dominic, I told myself firmly, but for me. Because for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I deserved to. The car took a different route this time, heading north along the lake. The city lights reflected off the black water, turning the shore into a ribbon of gold. We drove for nearly 30 minutes before turning into a private drive, past a gate that opened automatically, up a winding road lined with trees. The house, because calling it anything else would be an understatement, sat at the top of a hill, all glass and steel and modern lines that somehow managed to look warm rather than cold. Lights glowed from within, and I could see the lake stretching out beyond, infinite and dark. "He's waiting inside," Carlo said, opening my door. "Take your time, Miss Mitchell. There's no rush tonight." I walked to the front door on shaking legs. It opened before I could knock, and there was Dominic, dressed in dark jeans and a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal surprisingly muscular forearms. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it, and he looked more human than I'd ever seen him. "Emma." My name was a breath, a prayer, a question. "You came. You didn't make it sound optional." A genuine smile crossed his face. The first real smile I'd seen from him. It transformed his features, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. "Tonight, everything is optional. Come in." The interior of the house was stunning. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, furniture that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. But what caught my attention was the smell. Someone was cooking. "You cook?" I asked, surprised. "When I have time, which isn't often." He led me through the living room to a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. Marble counters, professional-grade appliances, herbs growing in pots by the window. I thought tonight should be different, more intimate than a restaurant. Intimate. The word hung between us like a promise. He poured me sparkling water with fresh berries, remembering I couldn't drink alcohol, and returned to the stove where something that smelled incredible was simmering. I perched on one of the bar stools, watching him move around the kitchen with the same controlled grace he brought to everything. "Why am I really here, Dominic?" I asked quietly. His hand paused over the pot for just a moment before continuing. "Because I wanted to see you without the pretense of business, without Carlo standing guard or staff watching. Just us. There is no us, isn't there?" He turned to face me, his dark eyes searching mine. "Emma, from the moment you sent that text, something shifted. I can't explain it. I've built my entire life on logic, on calculated moves and measured risks. But with you," he shook his head, "with you, nothing is calculated. Nothing makes sense. And yet it's the most certain thing I've felt in years." My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. "You don't know me. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to work a graveyard shift alone in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago. I know you're loyal enough to stay silent about Marcus even when talking to the police might have helped you. I know you're strong enough to decide to keep a baby even when every practical consideration says you shouldn't." He moved closer, coming around the island until he was standing in front of me. "I know that when you smile, which you don't do often enough, it feels like the sun coming out after a long winter. Dominic, let me finish." His hand came up, his fingers brushing my cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. I know my interest in you isn't appropriate. I know the power imbalance is massive. I know I've given you no real choice in any of this. But Emma, I also know that what I feel when I look at you isn't about control or possession. It's something I haven't felt since before my sister died. It's hope. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. I'm pregnant with another man's baby. I'm broken and in debt, and I have nothing to offer you. You have everything to offer. His thumb caught my tears, wiping them away. You have honesty in a world built on lies. You have strength that doesn't come from violence or money. You have a heart that hasn't been destroyed despite every reason it should be. His forehead touched mine, and I could feel his breath on my lips. And that baby you're carrying? I meant what I said, Emma. Marcus doesn't deserve to be a father. But if you'll let me, I could be. The world stopped. What are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying that I want more than an employee. More than someone to manage my restaurant or keep my books. His hands framed my face, and the intensity in his eyes was overwhelming. I'm saying I want you, Emma. You and the baby. I want to give you the life you deserve. The life my sister never got to have. I want to be the man who catches you when you fall. Who protects you not because I own you, but because He stopped, swallowed hard. Because I'm falling in love with you, and I have been since the moment you corrected my text with no idea who you were talking to. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This was insane. This was moving too fast. This was everything I'd never dared to dream about, and everything I should run from. You don't love me, I said weakly. You can't. We just met. Tell me you don't feel it too. His eyes searched mine desperately. Tell me that when I touch you, something inside you doesn't recognize something inside me. Tell me I'm alone in this, Emma, and I'll back off. I'll keep things professional. I'll give you the job and the apartment and the security, and I'll never ask for more. But if you feel even a fraction of what I do, I kissed him. I didn't plan it, didn't think about it. I just leaned forward and pressed my lips to his, and the world exploded into sensation. He made a sound low in his throat, surprise or relief or hunger, and his arms came around me, pulling me off the bar stool and against his chest. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and consuming, like we were both drowning and each other was air. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were wild. Emma, I feel it, I admitted, my voice breaking. God help me. I feel it too. And it terrifies me because I don't know if it's real or if I'm just so desperate for someone to save me that I'm confusing gratitude with. It's real. He kissed me again, softer this time. I don't care if you're grateful. I don't care if you need saving. I care that you're here, that you're mine, that I get to be the one who makes sure you never have to be afraid again. I'm still afraid, I whispered against his lips. Good. Fear keeps you smart. But Emma? He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. I swear to you on everything I have that I will never be what you need to fear. I will never hurt you. I will never abandon you. I will never be Marcus. Promise me, I said, even though I knew promises were fragile things. Promise me this is real. It's real. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips again. More real than anything I've ever felt. And I'm going to prove it to you, every single day, until you believe it. We ate dinner on the couch overlooking the lake, plates balanced on our laps, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in Russia, about coming to America with nothing, about building his empire from the ground up, through equal parts brilliance and brutality. I told him about my childhood in Ohio, about my mother's struggles, about the dreams I'd had before life taught me that dreams were luxuries poor girls couldn't afford. You can dream again, he said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. With me, you can have whatever you want. I want to believe that, then believe it. He pulled me closer, and I let myself relax against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Move in with me. I stiffened. Dominic. Not right away. Take the apartment in Lincoln Park. Learn the job. Get settled. But Emma, I don't want this to be temporary. I don't want you to be something I keep at arm's length because it's appropriate. I want you here, I want to wake up next to you. I want to be there for every doctor's appointment, every milestone. His hand moved to my stomach, resting there with reverence. I want to be this baby's father in every way that matters. That's crazy. We barely know each other. Then we'll learn. We have time. He kissed the top of my head. I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I'm just asking you to consider it, to give us a chance. I looked up at him, at this dangerous, powerful man who somehow made me feel safer than I'd ever felt in my life. What about Marcus? Marcus is being dealt with. His voice hardened slightly. He's alive, as I promised. He'll spend the next decade paying his debt through labor in one of my overseas operations. He'll never contact you, never know about the baby, never interfere with your life again. He's gone, Emma. Completely. I should have felt guilty, should have protested. Instead, I just felt relief. Okay, I whispered. Okay, what? Okay, I'll consider it. Moving in. Being whatever we are. I turned in his arms to face him fully. But Dominic, I need you to understand something. I'm not a possession. I'm not a prize you won. If we do this, it has to be real. It has to be equal, or at least as equal as it can be given. I gestured vaguely, encompassing everything he was, everything I wasn't. It will be real. His hands cupped my face. You'll have your own money, your own career, your own life. I'm not trying to cage you, Emma. I'm trying to give you wings. He smiled slightly. Even if those wings mean you're strong enough to fly away from me someday. I don't want to fly away. Good. Because I'm not sure I could survive it if you did. We kissed again, and this time it led to more gentle touches that became urgent. Clothes discarded piece by piece. His whispered questions of, "Are you sure?" and "Is this okay?" making me fall harder with every word. He was careful with me, reverent, like I was something precious instead of broken. And when he moved inside me, his eyes never leaving mine, I felt something shift deep in my chest. This was real. Whatever else happened, whatever complications came, this moment was real. Afterward, we lay tangled together on his bed, the lake visible through the massive windows, the city lights glittering in the distance like fallen stars. I love you, he said into the darkness. I know it's too soon. I know it's not logical, but I love you, Emma Mitchell, and I'm going to spend every day proving it. I didn't say it back. Not yet. The words felt too big, too permanent for someone who'd learned that permanence was an illusion. But I held him tighter and whispered, "Ask me again in a month, when I've had time to believe this isn't a dream." It's not a dream. He pulled a blanket over us, sheltering us from the cold. It's a promise. And I always keep my promises. 6 months later, I stood in the nursery of Dominic's house, our house now, putting the final touches on the room we'd designed together. Soft gray walls, white furniture, a mobile with stars and moons hanging above the crib. The baby would be here in 3 months, and I still couldn't quite believe this was my life. The restaurant was thriving. I'd learned the business faster than anyone expected, even opened a second location with Dominic's backing. I had a career, a purpose, a life that was mine even as I shared it with him. And Dominic had kept every promise. He'd been there for every doctor's appointment, his hand holding mine during the ultrasounds, his face lighting up when we learned we were having a girl. He'd proposed 2 months ago, not with pressure or expectation, but with a simple question. Will you let me love you forever? I'd said yes. Not because I needed saving anymore, but because I wanted to. Because somewhere between that first terrifying text and this moment, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with him. Are you happy? He asked from the doorway, and I turned to see him watching me with those dark eyes that still made my heart race. I'm happy, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. He crossed to me, his arms wrapping around me from behind, his hands settling on my rounded belly where our daughter kicked enthusiastically. I'm going to be a father. You already are. I covered his hands with mine. In every way that matters, Dominic. You already are. I love you. He whispered against my neck. My brave, beautiful Emma, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for staying. I love you too. The words came easily now, natural as breathing. "Thank you for catching me. Always," he promised. "I'll always catch you." And as I stood there in the nursery we'd built together, in the house we'd made a home, carrying the baby we'd both claimed as ours, I finally understood what it meant to be truly free. Not free from Dominic, but free because of him. Free to be myself, to dream, to love without fear. He'd promised me wings, and he'd delivered. And I'd chosen to use them to fly straight into his arms and stay there, wrapped in a love that had started with a wrong number and became the rightest thing in my life. The past, Marcus, the debt, the fear, felt like it belonged to a different person. That girl who worked graveyard shifts and counted pennies was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth, who had a partner who saw her value even when she couldn't see it herself. Dominic had given me everything. But more importantly, he'd taught me that I deserved everything. And that made all the difference.